25 creepiest police calls, according to Reddit. Number 25. Dad responds to a call where a guy stabbed an old lady. Guy just kinda sat around after. When they got there, he was just going into custody without any fight. The dude had no expression or emotion. Like a real-life Dexter. Another time, some tornado ripped through a trailer park back in the 90s, and there were just bodies in trees. Edit. As said before, I believe the tornado was in Kissimmee, and if you'd like, I can ask my dad tomorrow for specifics. Who is this guy? Number 24. This may be quite tame compared to the other posts, but so far it's the creepiest for myself. An elderly woman had called in reporting that a man carrying a drawstring bag was walking around her and her husband's property. She described the man as walking like a zombie and was looking down towards the ground the entire time. She wasn't able to tell if the man was attempting to break in or not. My partner and I were about 15 minutes away when the call came in from dispatch. When we were about halfway there, the elderly woman had reported that her husband, who was downstairs watching the front yard with a shotgun in hand by the front door, told her that he watched the trespasser disappear into a cornfield that was across the street from their house. My partner and I quickly searched the area around the cornfield, then went to the house. As I took down some information from both the husband and the wife, my partner searched the property for any signs of tampering, but found nothing. We then patrolled the area for a good 10 or so minutes, hoping to find the man, but didn't. That man lives in that cornfield now, biding his time, waiting for the right opportunity. Number 23. Not a cop or even an EMT. Just friends with someone who was on the volunteer fire department, not unusual for people who live in the mountains of Colorado. I was with my friend when he got towed out to a motorcycle accident in a canyon. A motorcyclist tried to pass a car in a curve and ran into a truck. He was wearing a helmet, but the helmet disintegrated from the force of the crash. When we arrived, the motorcyclist was in shock, wandering around picking up pieces of his motorcycle. He apparently spent the last part of his wreck sliding down the asphalt on his face, because he literally had no nose, just a hole where it should have been. He looked like a walking skeleton with the front of his face ground down like that. Yeah, there's a mental image for you. I helped my friend pick up pieces of the motorcycle. The largest piece we found was a gas tank. It was a miracle that the rider even survived. Number 22. I got a call that there was an abandoned truck on the highway. I was only a mile or two away, so I headed there. It was in the middle of these curves with a mountain wall on one side and a drop off to a creek on the other side. It was dark, probably around midnight, when I pull up and there it is, an old 50s pickup truck, light blue, sitting there. I have no backup. I have no idea where the driver is. I walk up, gun out, inhaling the strong alcohol vapors. No one to be found. I call for a tow truck. Meanwhile, I have to wait in the dark in the middle of the blind curves with no idea where the driver is or why he left. My adrenaline was at an all-time high for sure. Now, this list makes us aware of a couple of things, guys. Everybody's, when you ask them, hey, what are some of your common fears? The common fear is, of course, to be afraid of the dark, things like that. What we actually fear is the unknown, and we are right to. This keeps us alive. It's a survival instinct. A lot of the times when you put a gun in somebody's cop's hands, like, it doesn't need to be an insane situation to get that blood flowing and, the adrenaline pumping. It just needs to be a situation where they don't know what will happen next and fear that perhaps their life may depend on it. So here we have a guy that just approached a car with nobody in it on a street where, there's a sharp turn, so maybe a car could come around the corner. And on paper, that doesn't sound like that big of a deal at all. But, when he's in person, it's pretty scary as fuck. Somebody could get shot in the wrong scenario. Number 21, not a cop, but work within a school district and have heard some pretty unfortunate stories about reported abuse. Anytime a child says that their dad, coach, aunt, cousin, sibling, pastor touched their pee-pee, it's creepy. Worse are the ones that mention it to a grown-up but don't know the real word, so the teacher thinks the flower the kid mentions is an actual flower. Oh, that's so sad. Moral of the story: penis, vagina, testicles, labia, clitoris, and breasts. Get comfortable with the real words and teach them to your kids. Yeah. Someone responds, "This is the reason my 4-year-old knows the proper words, and I am thankful for it since she was able to tell me a couple of months ago that her older half-brother had put a Nerf bullet up her vagina." The matter has been investigated and is being dealt with. She has not been to her father's house since the incident happened. Oh boy. Oh boy. You want to say boys will be boys, they're just having some innocent fun with the but it's still fucked up, man. Number 20. Number 20. Oh, good Lord, write a novel, why don't you? For some reason, the suicides always hit me the hardest. I had a good friend that killed himself in high school, so suicide is a touchy thing, not just for everyone, but especially for those who have a personal experience with it. I've seen the 3 suicides by gun, 2 by hanging, and a handful that did it intentionally by using drugs of some sort or other methods. Long story short, a guy shot himself in his garage with a .357 Magnum. I have a pretty strong stomach, thankfully, because of experience, but I believe I accidentally stepped on a piece of his eye. When I cleared the call, I went straight to the locker room and cleaned the bottom of my boots for a good 40 minutes. I repeated the cleaning process at home, too. Now, sure, that's not exactly creepy, just disturbing. But here's one. We get a call from the hotel off the interstate. Employee went to clean a room and found a note on the bathroom door, which was closed and locked. It read, "Don't come in, call 911. So, the front desk did just that. We get there and she shows us the room. We tried knocking on the bathroom door, no answer. We weren't even sure if there was someone in there or not. The on-site manager told us we were allowed to force entry into the bathroom. She was concerned because none of the employees ever remember the guests checking out. My partner gets the door open, and it was like something off of a horror movie. The guy was in the tub, completely naked, knife on the floor, just next to the hot tub, or the tub, sorry. Cuts on his wrists, and the absolute worst thing was the blood inside the tub. I've never seen so much blood in my 10 plus years career. His face was pale, and it appeared that he was frowning. He didn't appear to be breathing. Call a medic, my partner says. I just look at him and say, no, dude's dead. I'm not touching him. You can check if you want, but we need to get our supervisor, an EVT, and a detective in here. I could recognize a dead guy when I saw one. I get a manager who is having a legit panic attack to calm down, Christ, and head back down to the desk while we deal with this. Called for another car and told dispatch to contact our evidence technicians and a detective. When I hear my partner scream and exclaim, "Oh fucking shit," I run back over and he's wide-eyed staring at the body. He just moved. The fucker's alive, man. He just moved. What are you talking about? He has a fucking pulse. It's faint but as hell, but it's there. His leg moved under the water when I tried checking it. Sure enough, I put on my big boy undies and could barely feel a pulse on the guy. Medic called and they rushed him to the ER. Turned out that he did... I'm sorry, this is blowing my mind. Turned out he did the cutting just minutes before the cleaning maid found the note. So surprisingly, he barely lived. Oh my God. Okay. He goes on to say he lived, but it wasn't pretty. He cut his wrist while he was bathing. A majority of what looked like blood was indeed blood, but it was mixed in with the water, which made it look like there was a lot more blood than what he actually spilled. And in all honesty, cutting your wrists isn't a great way to off yourself. He thinks he was bleeding for about 10 or 15 minutes before he started to go to sleep, and he would have been fine for a little longer as long as he got help. It depends on a lot of other circumstances. Ugh. Number 19. Are we accepting not me, but a cop I know stories? Well, isn't every Reddit thread just a fucking circle jerk of people that aren't what we're asking for, answering questions? Like, hey, what did you have for breakfast this morning? Well, it wasn't breakfast per se. Like, what the fuck? What did I just ask? My cousin is in a major city. Apparently 911 got a call from a 6-year-old claiming vehemently, depending on where you're from. Let's fuck around on Google and see which one is probably the main one to pronounce. Vehemently. Okay. It's pretty interesting stuff, you know. I don't like that one. You know what I'm talking about? Straight up, just don't like it. Let's go back. 6-year-old is claiming vehemently that there was a zombie outside of his house on the street, so a patrol car swings around to see what's up. Turns out a tweaker on meth gouged out his own eyes, had blood dripping down from the empty sockets, and was stumbling around blindly with his hands stretched out in front of him. Well, let me tell you something. That's about as close to a real life zombie as we're gonna get. Goddamn, turns out the kid was telling the truth. Don't do drugs, y'all. Number 18, UK. Got called to assist an ambulance in an address because they were struggling with a woman who'd apparently had a seizure. We got there, and she's this tiny, skinny little Singaporean lady who's being held down on the floor by a paramedic. She's hissing and struggling against her and repeatedly trying to bite the paramedic. Her eyes are all black and red, no white. It takes me 200 pounds, my partner for the evening, 180 pounds, plus 3 paramedics to hold her down. All the time she's struggling and trying to bite with veins popping out of her neck. She looks past us at the corner of the room, screaming at something that isn't there, telling it not to kill her and us. Her husband, who seems weirdly unfazed by the whole thing, tells us that this has been happening since she last went to Singapore and got sick after visiting a holy site. Usually her sister has to stop it by putting this powder on her forehead and a cross shape, but unfortunately she's out of the country. In the end, she was taken to a hospital for a mental health assessment by paramedics, and I often wonder what the outcome was, but have no way of finding out, unfortunately. It's shit like this that's genuinely creepy, because, again, what if she was seeing something, you know? What if she was seeing something? I know a lot of people may not take stake in what we would consider paranormal, but, you know, a lot of people can't I want to say outright make the claim that it doesn't exist because you don't know otherwise. And I always like to imagine that without the right, I want to say, tools to see, we otherwise would just believe that certain things aren't there. Think of like things on a microscopic level. Without a microscope, we can't see it. So, It may not exist. Certain things we can't see normally, like we may need night vision or infrared to kind of put new eyes on us. Special eyes. Number 17, not me but my cousin. He got a call one night that two brothers, age 4 and 6, were found dead in a near empty swimming pool. There was like 6 to 8 inches of water in the pool, and the call came from their dad. They never could charge the man, but it was widely believed that he killed his 2 sons. Somebody responds asking what was the official reason for the 2 kids dying at the same time in such little water. That's sad, man. Those kids are young. What are the odds of, like, I can see one kid dying. Like, when you get 2 little boys together and they going crazy, little boys are the worst. You know what I mean? Little girls are pretty innocent, but little boys are actively, like, monstrously trying to kill themselves. And when you get 2 of them together, oh my God, it's the testosterone, it's the competition. The 2 of them are actively trying crazier and crazier ways. And if one of them is older than the other one, oh my God, the little one is like a crash test dummy. If you're a younger brother, you're lucky to have made it. You're really lucky to have made it, because you are just a crash test dummy for that older. Imagine you have a video game where you have a little baby and you can kick it and you can throw it. It's a football. It's just yours. You get extra points for how crazy the rag doll looks. You know what I mean? That's what you were in real life to your older brother or sibling. I'm sure the girls are even crueler if they're older sisters to a little boy. But you guys are lucky to have made it. My point again is, I can see one of those kids dying, but both of them? That's suspicious as fuck. Number 16 on the list of 25 creepiest police calls. Ooh, I'm kidding. Number 16, ex-cop here. Let's get that out of the way. I worked in a high-tech task force agency conducting computer forensic investigations. Lots of child porn. Lots. Anyway, we were doing a multi-agency search warrant sweep in a large metro area in California. We serve a search warrant for disturbing possessing CP at a residence in a semi-decent area, and the suspect fit the prototypical Hollywood child molester look. Oh no. He lived with his disabled wife, kids, and she had mobility issues, mostly stayed down the stairs and had not been upstairs for years. We go upstairs, and this guy has a legitimate masturbation station set up in one of the bedrooms that had an outside padlock on it. It was dark, the windows were covered, and had baby dolls with their assholes cut out all over the room, and some of their mouths cut out for impromptu baby sex dolls. Some of their heads were removed and scattered on the floor. This guy had serious issues. Masturbation station. Number 15. Not a cop myself, but my dad is, and I asked him one time. He told me it was when he went to this one house because a woman had called and said that the men were breaking into their house. He gets there, and he said it was immediately very clear that the woman was not exactly altogether mentally. He said she kept mumbling things and was very jumpy and skittish. Not to mention that every single wall of her house apparently had at least 6 or 7 crosses on it, if not more. He calms her down, checks around the house for any signs of entry or just anything weird, and there's absolutely nothing that would indicate that anyone had been trying or had been successful in breaking in. He said she followed him around the entire house and would point to things like a doorknob or a window latch and say, "Oh, that's not where I left it. That's how they got in." He said the whole thing was fairly eerie, considering he was at this woman's house in the middle of the night, surrounded by crosses and listening to her mumble on about random shit. To make her feel better, he did sweep the outside of the whole house to see if there was anyone else inside, which there wasn't. He said the one thing that made it creepy for him was the fact that every few minutes she'd say something like, "Oh, they're here again," or "He's right behind us, I can feel it." Ugh. Somebody said, "Sounds like schizophrenia to me." Well, textbook, honestly. Number 14, not a cop, but a correctional officer in Texas. One time, a guy slit the forearm side of his elbows, where it bends. He laid there in a big puddle of his own blood. I was one of the responders that day. I'll never forget it. As soon as you entered the cell, the smell just hit you. Blood has a strong metallic smell, which I never realized before. He had been laying there a while, so the blood had coagulated, which again, I did not expect. As we lifted the barely conscious guy out of the blood fell off his body in chunks, like jello. It was pretty disturbing because I didn't expect any of it, nor was I able to mentally prepare for it. We're not really medically trained, so if all of it was pretty surprising to me, completely surprising to me. Ugh. I'm supposed to read through the cringe. Anyway, number 13 on the list of 25 creepiest police calls. When they're not even police calls, because everybody's like, "Not a cop here." Anyway, number 13, a cabal of pedophiles bought a duplex. That sucks. Oh, you know what they're gonna be doing in there. They roamed together on one side and rented the other side to single mothers. Interesting. They roomed together and then rented the other side to single moms. That's disgusting. They had blocked out the window of their rape room with Dora the Explorer blankets. I found that pretty disconcerting. Epilogue, this was back when I was in patrol. The case was pretty well wrapped up by the time we went to the house with DCS to gather some belongings of the children that had been removed. DCS has a big mess on their hands because the mothers of the children, all of them addicted to hard drugs, had been complicit in the rapes. Oh no. Guys, you don't know how bad drugs are, and it's because when you're addicted, you'll do anything for that fix. And I kept reading these stories about like these dads that would have their daughters like get addicted and then perform sexual favors on the dad to get more of the fix. It was so bad. It was so bad. And like these moms are pretty much just like renting out their kids to be molested and abused so that they can get their drugs. Fuck, man. SVU hadn't been able to build a strong case against one of the pedophiles, so he had avoided arrest. I called him a pedophile because he had an actual conviction for child molestation. Jesus, gross. He stayed in an upstairs bedroom with his girlfriend while we got the kids' clothing and whatnot. At one point, for whatever reason, the DCS guy asked for the pedo's name. I went up to get it, and the pedo knows the score. He's been to prison. He knows he just barely missed going back for now. He knows all of the cops are very much on edge. He meekly answered the questions while his obese girlfriend started shrieking. "You don't have to answer shit. Fuck these pigs. Don't talk to them." Ugh. I so very badly wanted to punch her in the fucking face. Holy crap. Whoa, number 12. My cousin is a cop, and he responded to a call on Valentine's Day night. A 12-year-old girl called in to say that her mother had blown her brains out in the living room. Lucky. I'm kidding. I guess her and her brother were getting ready for dinner, and the mom just shot herself. He said that the creepy thing about it was the dinner was all set up, drinks on the table, and suddenly she shot herself. Kids were sitting outside when we arrived, and to this day I can't imagine Valentine's Day for them, but I know that it's something that stuck with him after he saw it. Valentine's Day, baby. Well, I mean, it's Valentine's Day, so that makes a lot of sense. It'd be like if it happened on Christmas, you know? Some of these women ain't happy. That's the way you gotta look at it. So thank God she took it out on herself instead of on the kids. And that's how most parents would handle it. A response to this says, an overlooked sign of abuse. I feel when a kid is way too mature and cool-headed for their age, that 12-year-old knew exactly what to do and how to protect their brother from the sight, which means she either had to do so before or was mentally prepared for the possibility. Now that's what I'm talking about. A response says, not always. Some kids are just very level-headed. When I was 11, my father got very sick very suddenly. Mom was doing a cross-country trip for work. It was just me, my father, and my 9-year-old brother. Guys, I'm only reading this because it was gilded. I don't like a story that starts with somebody like going, not really, when I, you know what I mean? Like, come on, man. This is just like the fucking definition of trying to one-up a nigga. You sound like a bitch right now, the way you started this story. He could have just said, whatever. Dad complained about abdominal pain, nausea, was vomiting, had fever, and chills, so we assumed he had bad gastroenteritis. All right. Or maybe some sort of food poisoning. I went to bed that evening with Dad sleeping on the couch. At around 1 a.m., I hear him yell in pain in the living room. Worried, I went downstairs and he's on the floor crying his life out, saying he's dying, puking blood all over the place. I woke up my brother and started crying also. I picked up the phone and called 911 saying my father was ill, gave them the address, and stayed on the phone with the operator describing the symptoms in what was a really clinical and matter-of-fact voice. To distract my brother, I ordered him to find our dad's cell phone, which was, a late 90s cell phone, which were still a novelty. From the cell phone, I called my grandfather that lived 5 houses down. He had spent the evening with us and went back home after Dad seemed to improve. Grandfather came running and took the lead with the 911 operator. During the time, I brought my brother upstairs and told him Dad was going to the hospital and that we had to pack him a bag. I was pretty sure that Dad would die in our living room, and I didn't want my brother to see him. We packed him a bathrobe, spare underwear, non-slip slippers, toiletry kit, and I even thought to include his medications in the bag. My brother wanted to put a PJ in the bag, and I told him, no, doofus. In the hospital, you wear a hospital gown. There's no need for a pajama. Is it a pajama, or do we just call them pajamas? But he'll want his bathrobe to not walk with his ass exposed. That made him laugh and stop crying. Paramedic shows up. Dad is going in and out of consciousness, so they rush him to the ER. Grandfather stays with us, but needs someone there, so I get on the phone again and call my other grandfather, my dad's father, to send him to the ER. Then I call Mom at her hotel and told her to come home ASAP. Maybe she works at a hotel? Dad had just left in an ambulance. Grandfather didn't know the other grandfather's phone number, and he didn't know which hotel my mom was at. I remember looking into the reservation papers Mom always left for Dad, finding her hotel for the night, calling the hotel, explaining to the front desk that we had a family emergency and to please wake up my mom immediately, and I would stay on the phone and wait and talk to her. Turns out that he had a thankfully benign tumor that tore a hole in his large intestine. Jesus Christ. He had to undergo emergency surgery that left him with a colostomy bag and spent nearly a month in the hospital. I got to meet a bunch of VIP at City Hall and got a certification that said I was a hero and a model citizen at some kind of ceremony. Whoa, get a load of this kid. It's definitely commendable. And if he's 11 years old, good job, you know what I mean? But he's also probably autistic, You can't leave shit like this out of the freaking comment section, bro. You probably spurgy as a motherfucker. You know what I'm talking about? I'm kidding. He's on the spectrum. That's for sure. Number 11. This ought to be good. It's also been gilded twice. That's good news, right, guys? I responded to a report of an unresponsive infant. Oh, he must have saved this kid's life. That's why people gild stuff. Oh, I like the way that story made me feel. Gold. When I arrived, all of the family members were standing around casually in a front yard, pointing into the house. I found the baby in the back room laying on her back on a bare mattress. I started CPR, but I realized the baby was probably already deceased. We rushed her out to the arriving ambulance, hoping that they had a way to bring her back. I learned she was the mother's second suspicious SIDS death, sudden infant death syndrome death. And I had her other children removed from her care. Wow. The difficult part was when I left the scene and went to the ER to see what came from the situation. As I walked in and asked where she was, an ER nurse walked over to me and handed me the deceased baby swaddled in a blanket and told me to wait for someone to show me to the morgue. So I'm standing there in the ER in uniform, holding what everyone thinks is a live infant, but rather an infant corpse. And several people stopped by wanting to see her and commenting on how cute it is to see an officer holding a baby. I just smiled, but it killed me inside. I was ushered back to the morgue after what felt like an eternity, and I was told I had to wait with the baby until the medical examiner arrived. Nigga, I got shit to do. Who do you think I am? What are you guys talking about? I gotta wait with the baby. They took the blankets off and laid her on a stainless steel gurney and left me alone with her again. This ain't my baby. I lounged around the morgue for about an hour waiting. By the time I got home, several hours after the end of my shift, because this call came out 15 minutes before the end of my 10-hour shift, I laid down on my bed and cried for a long time. My young daughter was in daycare and my wife at work. I really needed to hold both of them, so the house felt incredibly empty. My daughter was only slightly older than the infant, and when I was looking at her earlier, I kept seeing my own daughter. I didn't get any sleep at all before going back in for the next shift later that night. Chilling stuff, guys. Chilling stuff. Welcome to the Kyle list. Number 10. My father-in-law is sitting beside me, so I asked him. He is a retired sheriff and was a deputy before that. He was a first responder to an accident. A truckload of farm workers were coming back from the fields. The truck went over a hump in an intersection, and a little girl in the back of the truck flew out and landed head first on the pavement. My father-in-law held her as she moaned and eventually died in his arms. Must have been I'm sorry. I was gonna say it must have been something he said. You know, just died in your arms tonight. That's not funny. That's not funny, and it's so sad that I can't stop myself. You should see my face too when I realized when in my head I was like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" Look, I'm sorry. Okay, whatever. My father-in-law held her as she moaned and eventually died in his arms. Jesus Christ. My father-in-law held her as she moaned and eventually died in his arms. It's fucked up. It's fucked up. He says he still hears her sounds in his head all these years later. God, that sucks. A response reads, "Oh God, this reminds me of my uncle's story. He dealt with traffic accidents, and one time he was called out to one accident where a convertible had flipped over and slid. The mental image haunts me to this day." You know, this is probably the comedy of a lot of people that don't wear seatbelts or, ride motorcycles. Is guys, Imagine just taking a grater and just really just working on somebody's face like a piece of cheese. That's what pavement's gonna do to your ass when you're sliding across it, you know? These helmets are saving people's lives. I've seen helmets that like have literally just been ground down, you know, as if it was a piece of butter with a knife. Now, let's continue to number 9. Got a call that someone wasn't answering their phone or the doorbell. We got to the house and noticed that every window was blinded by either curtains or pieces of paper. We rang the doorbell and yelled through the letterbox, but there was no answer. We opened the door and got inside. In the house, it looked like someone just had lunch. There was bread on the table and juice or milk in the glasses. Children's toys scattered around. Then I saw a note that gave me the chills. It was a suicide note. As the door was locked from the inside, the person had to be in the house. We checked room by room, and my heartbeat was at 300% when I checked the bathroom. Preparing myself for slit wrists or throats, I opened the door slowly, but there was nothing. Finally, one more room left, and it was the attic. We walked slowly up the stairs, and we found the resident there, hanging from a beam. I'll never forget the adrenaline I had, the scene in the living room, or the resident I found. Someone else responds. I was a resident director at a student dormitory, and we'd get calls from helicopter moms that hadn't heard from their child in 3 days, so I'd occasionally have to do wellness checks. I was never really concerned because kids are too busy getting stoned, fucking, or studying, and drinking to call mommy every day. So, I had one call and I was prepared to see something ugly. Or were you not prepared? But I had one call where I was prepared to see something ugly. It was for a resident that I knew pretty well, who was always a bit down, who didn't really have any friends and gave off a weird vibe. But I knew she was close to her parents and walked around calling them a lot. Keying into her room, I was ready to see her in the tub or with a belt around her neck and a spilled pill bottle somewhere. Nope. She was shacked in with a new fuck buddy, and they turned the dorm into one large fort, complete with rooms and video game lounge, and had been too busy shagging and smoking dope to remember to call mom. She hadn't heard me knocking over their noise making, and both were quite upset I'd barged in. That was a good day. That's so cute. What a happy ending to a story. I like the idea that some people just, I want to say seem lonely or don't have it going on, and then they find one person that really gets them, and you guys are building forts and playing games and enjoying experiences together. That's the way it should be. That's what friends are for. Number 8. A few years ago, we had an apparent suicide, pedestrian versus a train. That is ugly stuff. Hispanic male in his early 20s left a note and decided to take a nap on the tracks. It was a mess. I mean, a real horror show of a mess. And anyone who has ever worked on a rail collision knows that your investigation really takes a back seat to getting the train moving again. And you're kind of selfish. You're jumping in front of a train, homie. You know what I mean? You could fuck other people's lives up. You could kill other people, You could kill other people. So we're working like crazy to get everything in order so we can release the train. Well, and this is the creepy part, the family claimed we missed some things out there, personal property of the deceased. I guess according to the mom and grandma, this kid had a big gaudy gold cross-neck chain and he loved more than life itself. We searched for it and never found it. We even came back out with a canine before I made the PSD unit and tried to pick up on an area search. No dice. At this point, it's just gone, disappeared into thin air. Well, this guy's little brother is a 17-year-old kid with a chip on his shoulder. He goes out there at night a few hours after we clear to look for himself. Before he went out, he told his friends and family that the cops were worthless and weren't trying to help. I shit you not, you could not make this shit up. He gets hit by a different train in almost the same damn spot on the tracks. You could still see the bloodstains on the shale. So sure as shit, we go out, and I was on the red I-12 shift from 1900 hours to 700 hours, and I'm not even kidding. We find the poor kid over 100 feet off the tracks, and he's got the gold chain clutched in his hand. That's some Final Destination shit. Why they ain't gilding this one? This one's freaking amazing. Are you kidding me? And then the final line. Let me deliver that line again. Hold on. Now that's some Final Destination shit. Now, my name is Morgan Freeman. And that's some Final Destination shit. I'm kidding. That's a bad Morgan Freeman. That's bad. Okay. Clutching the gold chain. What are you talking about, dude? What are you talking about? He's clutching the gold chain. I want to believe, dude. I want to believe. Number 7. My uncle was a sergeant and had to be called several times out to a house for domestic abuse. This older guy had some young 18-year-old he would pay for the guy to swallow certain objects like paper clips and human hair. What? The kid would poop it out into a bag, and the older guy would sift through the feces like a goddamn treasure hunt for the items. He would then put them in an envelope and file them. Okay, number 6. It was a stormy night on the Oregon coast. A lady was driving drunk and ran into the back of a parked school bus. When she did, her car caught fire, but she was able to escape. When I found her slowly walking down a side street, I was telling her to stop and turn around. When she turned around, her lower jaw was gone. And she was totally dazed. I'm sorry. Oh my God. I don't know what noise that was, but my body was like, oh. Her tongue was sticking straight out of the top of her neck. And she was trying to talk. She ended up surviving, but needed tons of plastic surgery. Someone said the other day there was a thread about things you've seen that no one will believe. Someone said they saw a person on the side of the road with no lower jaw. It was like, yeah, right, but it seems plausible now. Did I read this one? Give me a second just to quickly look. I don't think I've read this one. I don't think I've read this one. We'll save it for later. Maybe I'll read it at the end of this. Who knows? Let's see where it bottoms out. No, this is a good list. What the fuck? Why didn't I read it? Okay, I'll do that. I'll do that right after this. Literally. That's how much love I have. And maybe I'll make a cool $20 via PayPal. I'm kidding. What am I even on about right here? Yeah, dude, no jaw, fuck me. Number 5 has been deleted. We'll never figure out what it was based on context clues. Somebody says this is why I always keep an eye on a mini-map. Grand Theft Auto reference. Who knows? Who knows? Number 4, my dad was on the freeway and saw a guy in a big truck. It may have been a mail carrier. Well, that was swerving and driving crazy. He pulled him over, and the driver's hands were shaky and covered in blood. It turns out he had a prostitute in the back of his truck that he had killed not long before. You guys can't just be killing prostitutes willy-nilly. What are you driving in the middle of the day for? But I guess it didn't say what the time was. Anyway, somebody says, classic rookie mistake. Don't drive crazy when you kill the prostitute. It's true. You gotta keep it nice and casual. You know what I mean? Just act like you. The thing about driving with a dead prostitute in the truck is that you wanna drive like there's not a dead prostitute in the back, so that you know, for the future. Now you know. Congratulations, you're equipped with that knowledge. Number 3, we responded to a burglary alarm at a mortuary and find that one of the rear doors was left open. Policy now dictates that the entire building needs to be cleared, searched to confirm that it was a false alarm, which most are. It's the middle of the night and totally dark. We use flashlights and never turn on lights. We walk into one of the rooms and see a body on the table. It appeared that it was waiting to be processed, possibly embalmed, by the mortician. It smelled like a mildly decomposing body. Suddenly, I see a shadow to my right, and I shine the light there and find nothing out of the ordinary. I immediately smell a really strong whiff of perfume blow by me. The search was completed more expeditiously than normal after that, and nothing was found. Nigga, that's creepy. Now, somebody says, I'm not a mortician or anything, but I feel like it's kind of weird to just leave a body out overnight. Was there ever some kind of follow-up? Somebody else says it's not odd. Bodies don't decompose for 2 to 3 days at room temperature. They can be stored in the fridge for about a month, freezer long term. In cold climates, the ground freezes and they hold them until it thaws for the actual burial, if there's not a religious issue. This is important information to know. I hope you guys take this to heart. And remember, when trying to keep those bodies composed, remember the temperature and think with your nose. That's a great rhyme, Kyle, for a decomposing body. When trying to keep the body composed, remember the temperature and think with your nose. Does this body smell all right? Well, it's all right. This body smelling kind of funky. Oh, you need to turn on the light. And I say, follow me down. Number 2, working third shift on a Halloween night. I'm out on one of our smaller lakes just outside the city limits. Kids love to go out and drink, which is surrounded by some very nice houses. Going through the neighborhood, each of the roads ends at a small 2-lane road that surrounds the lake. I'm slowing to the stop sign and already starting to look to my right to make the turn when my headlights start tracking the rock wall that surrounds the lake, and I catch something out of the corner of my eye in one of the large trees that dots the walk path. I back up to see what it was, and I see a guy hanging. At first, I thought it was a Halloween decoration. The neighborhood is really into decorating for every holiday, so I stop. I get out, and as soon as my flashlight hits him, I realize, nope, no decoration. He dead. As I'm standing there getting ready to call it in, I notice a gaggle of kids come down the street trick-or-treating. Shit. As soon as they see my car start heading my way faster, so I book it back up the block to meet the parent walking with them and tell her she needs to take the long way around by the block the other way. She can see it on my face that I'm not kidding. Turns out he was a 20-year-old that was devastated about his girlfriend breaking up with him, and she lived in the last house on the block where she would see him the next morning when she looked out her window. Man, he didn't even get to get her to see him. Oh. Imagine you killing yourself to make a statement and then somebody coming to clean that up before the statement gets made. Jeez. This is why you got to be certain, guys. You killing yourself to make a statement, make sure, because you don't know what's going to happen after you dead. You got no control. It's just like going to jail. You guys can't do stuff on the outside. You in jail, nigga. Number 1 on the list of 25 creepiest police calls. From my post 8 months ago, I got a call for a missing child. Got to the home to find the mother highly distressed and not sure what to do. I called in everyone to first search the home and the property. I decided to search the backyard since it was a large wooded lot with no visible fence. After about 10 minutes, I found the boy, and he was caught on an old chain link fence in the woods that was blocked by a bunch of trees. So you could see it from the house. You couldn't see it from the house. He'd basically gotten strangled to death by the fence. He must have been climbing on it, fell, and got his hood sweatshirt caught on it. The worst part for me was having to call it in on the radio, knowing the mother might hear it inside from one of the officers' radios. That's pretty sad. A response here reads, the worst part for me was having to call in on the radio, knowing the mother might be hearing. Somebody says, I was in search and rescue and we found the same sort of issue. There is often family around the search site. We have a policy that you say you found a red shoe, which meant that we were to switch to an alternative channel. And then somebody else just comments, we just have a policy to switch to cell phones, which makes a lot more sense. You guys are fucking crazy. Not to date this video for anybody listening to it way after the fact, but it looks like Adam West died today, and that really fucking sucks. That really fucking sucks. The man's 88 years old, but still, dude, that shit ain't cool. A lot of us remember, obviously a lot of us remember Adam West as, TV's original Batman. The campy, funny, charming Batman running around with like a big, a big cartoon styled bomb. Jesus Christ, this guy's the shit. But a lot of younger people may remember Adam West as, Mayor Adam West on Family Guy. A quote from Adam West of what use is a dream if not a blueprint for courageous action. That's nuts. Well, I'll try to read that other list right now to lighten the mood here. I am dying. I'm going to be broke as hell till the end of the month. So I need to make a shitload more videos and hope that YouTube blesses me with $2 a video. Oh my God, them destroying the ads has just fucked me right up. But guys, I love you, and maybe I'll stream tonight. We'll see where that goes. But I'm definitely going to record another list right now, so take it easy.